It's that AA suffix Range Rover again, the 1981 two-door, this chappie. In this episode, I'm going to be messing around taking the engine out, amongst other things. Engine needs to come out for clutch, really, so that's mainly what this episode's about. Me getting the engine out, sorting the clutch out, and there's your spoiler. Enjoy the video. Flywheel's back from the machine shop after a damn good skim. I just need to give it a bit of a clean up. But that's made a big difference. Now, machine shop did say to me, in one of these areas, probably there, the judder from the clutch had bitten into the face of the flywheel so badly that it had actually cracked it. So he had to take a reasonable amount off it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the thickness, but to be honest, these things are so flipping heavy. What I will need to do, and this is something you do with Triumph Stag flywheels too, is I'll need to measure the depth of the bolts when the cover plate goes on. And I think this is what the root cause of the original problem was. So the bolts go into the threaded holes that hold the clutch cover plate on. Dowels have been taken out for the skim. So the bolts go in, but if the bolts don't torque down properly, then you can get a feeler gauge between the plate and the flywheel. Then the clutch is always going to judder, because the clutch cover will be juddering. And we think that's what caused the original problem. Machine shop and I. So, when we look at the clutch plate itself, can we get some light on this? You can see in certain areas, so around here, you can see where the clutch plate has picked up on something. And you really shouldn't have those kind of juddery kind of lines there, and it's on both sides of the plate as well, so around on this side here. So not ideal really, is it? This is an old AP Lockheed plate as well, so it's quite an old one. So I think what I'll do is, this is going to go on one way round as well. So what I'll do is I will line everything up, put the clutch cover on, put the dowel pins back in again. I have got a new clutch cover coming and a new clutch plate. But the other job, we're rambling backwards and forwards here, aren't we, Richard? The other job I need to sort out is the oil leak. Now, I can't see any evidence of an oil leak on the back of the engine. The telltale for that is normally when you get the flywheel off the car, off the engine, if I just tilt this over, then you'll see stripes of oil streaking out from the centre where the oil's flung out by the flywheel turning, and there was nothing on this. It was pretty clean with not a huge amount of oil and gloop on it. But then of course, once you look in the front of the bell housing, well, there's oil down there. Oh look, there's oil up there too. So I'm going to give it a flipping good clean out in a second. Take the clutch release arm out. Might need to take the clutch sleeve off as well, so that I can get the various bits and bobs, the components replaced that need to be replaced. But then ultimately I need a new gasket, which looks very much like that. They're pennies, to replace the oil pump gasket, see if the oil leak goes away. And then I extracted the pilot bush, the spigot bush, from the engine. Now you can see it's got some distress on the end of it here, and that was on the outside face, and that could be when the gearbox was last put back on again, or it could be when someone was tapping it in. However, if I check it out on the input shaft of the gearbox, I'm leaning right over the slam panel and bumper here, there's not a lot wrong with it really, so I'm going to replace it with a new one, and it can all go back together again. Now, encouragingly, we've got the plastic clip is on the push rod, and I'll go through this, but there should be a plastic dowel in the end of the fork there, and then of course we've got the release bearing, release Roderick bearing. So all of that will be coming out in a moment, and yeah, I'll probably disconnect the clutch hydraulics because when this is done, when I've got the engine back in, I want to lower the tail of the gearbox down so that I can get the overdrive sorted out. Pilot bush, right, that can go up there. Now, when it comes to those bolts, when we look at the bolts, there is some signs on these that the thread has been somewhat distressed. That one less so. That one looks like it's had some struggles, as has that one. So if we were to take the boxer bolts, clutch plate out of the way. Mine, one of these chappies all the way in. Working one-handed, Richard. I might need to clean these threads out. No, that's gone in. Right, when that's right at the bottom of the thread, the pressure plate wants to be able to fit underneath that along with whatever lock washer is in place. And if they're close, i.e. the end of the bolt has hit the bottom of the hole, then, and you can see it has because it's picked up a load of glute from the bottom of the hole, then there's a reasonable chance that the bolt's just a bit too long. But we'll see. We will see. I've not got to the bottom of it yet exactly why this thing was juddering quite as horribly as it was. Dowel bolts, dowel pins coming back in. And this is also evidence that the flywheel had been skimmed before, because these come out easily. Right, pressure plate, and as you remember, or will recall from earlier in this video, or its previous video, the pressure plate is shagged. Again, I suspect it's an old AP Lockheed pressure plate that has just had some contamination and so forth. Right, so that goes on there, and that goes on there. There's no clutch plate in there yet because I really want to be able to bolt this thing down and check to see whether I'm bottoming out or not. So I'll do this as a very quick exercise, but if I do need to shorten the bolts, then Mr. Flap Disc on the end of that and take a thread off will probably do the job. Right, now, without the lock washers, which are going to be, what, a good 2-ish mil thick, the bolts have gone all the way down. So I'm suspecting that the bolts weren't bottoming out. I can't recall whether the bolts were loose or not. I'm pretty sure I would have realised that as I was taking it off if one of the bolts was hanging out. Just need to turn that so I can get it to wind it out. Just clean these threads out. Now let's just have a look at the end of that, having been all the way in there. Well, it's not bottomed out because it's not gone shiny on the end. And here you can see the wear, these ridges on the outside edge here. I don't know why they've done it. And there's all sorts of lumps taken all the way around on this flywheel, lots of contamination on here, but then it's been sitting on the floor. It's also got a lot of heat damage to it as well. You see the tint on there is heat damage. It's entirely possible that the clutch started to slip. Look at that judder mark around there. It's entirely possible the clutch started to slip and someone just replaced the clutch plate, friction plate, rather than taking a look at the whole damn thing and thinking, do you know what, that's fucked. And putting the original clutch cover back in. There was quite a lot of dust and grit hanging around, and this hasn't been in long enough, I don't think, to pick up on these ridges here. Cleaned all of the mud and the very, very, very light misting of oil off the back of the engine cover, tied up the bolts of the flywheel. That can go back on now. And then for the gearbox, I've taken off the housing. So So in the back here you can see the blue gasket, that's the old one for the oil pump. And you see the gears for the oil pump in there below the main shaft, the input shaft. Now, none of the bolts were particularly tight, all finger tight. That's not uncommon. And the other thing, I think this has been apart before, one of these spring washers was missing off the bolts. So someone's had it apart before. It's not unusual. Car's getting on a bit now, you know. These things happen. Yeah, if I can get that sealed back up, must remember to top the gearbox back up, but because I'm doing the overdrive, I'm going to do all the fluids. There's no oil in the engine either. Right, let's get flywheel back on again. There we are, flywheel's all in place. Don't worry about that mark on there, that's just grub from me putting the flywheel on. New pilot bushes in there. It's ever so easy to get the pilot bushes out. People struggle with these things, with slide hammers and all sorts of shit. Get yourself the centering tool that you use. Now I use one of these, an old school Sykes Pickard box, and in here you'll find that will go exactly inside the pilot bush. Put the handle on it, fill the hole with grease, tap it in with a hammer, the bush comes straight back out again. Banal. It's as easy as that. So flywheel, pilot bush all done. The new gasket's gone onto the pump. Yes, all of the fixings were loose, as I've mentioned already. And as you can see, I've taken all the release mechanism out as well, which is the next thing I'm going to be working on. So I'm waiting for the clutch kit to turn up from L.O.F clutches. And, oh, there's my hat. So what we need to do now is to sort this shambles out. Well, flexi hose is on its way. It's still got some compliance in it, but for the cost of these things, and while it's apart, I might as well replace the flexi hose. The metal pipe is good enough. I'll just check it comes out in one bit. You can get these pipes brand spanking new. Clutch sleeve looks to be a recent fitment. It's in good order. Someone's put a lot of grease on the inside of the cylinder, mainly, I guess, to prevent water from damaging the bore. This is kind of an off-road trick, I'm guessing. And then we've got the release bearing, which is, again, it's not in bad order, but we replace them as a matter of course. And there's the overdrive over there, hiding underneath that cloth that I just picked up. So what I need to do here is there's a bush underneath here. There's a clip there that holds the push rod in, and I need to get this lot, and there should be a clip that holds that on there as well. So I'm waiting for the parts to turn up. I'll give it a clean up in the short term. Let's put that cloth over there and that cloth over there. Waiting for the kit to turn up, and then once it's arrived I can get the clutch on and we can start thinking about getting this engine back in. Well, there you go, it's all apart. Oh yes. Now I didn't film taking this thing apart because I just wanted to have the radio on, if I was honest about this. But take the rear plate off, and then you undo the shim, the circlip on the end of the main shaft that goes through. Then you can take the little packing spaces and the thrust washer off. Then you can extract the bearing from the back. You don't need to take that circlip off, which is a mistake I made because that's disappeared over the back of the workshop somewhere. Because I'm not replacing this bearing, although I might need to. That's a bit growly. So we might need to replace that bearing anyway. So then that clip needs to be replaced. So that's your rearmost bearing. Then you have the selector rings and the synchros. Pop that down there. And then you've got the forward shaft, which you need to wiggle sideways so that you can get it off the lay shaft. And the lay shaft rod just comes straight out the side there. Now, this lay shaft is looking quite distressed. That's not going to be a quiet overdrive. So I think this one is more or less going to be parts. I need to go over the other gears, but the lay shaft's the one that suffers the most. And you can see that that is actually quite heavily worn on these teeth. I don't know if the light is picking it up. I'll see if I can get a photograph of some of these. There's no cracks on there, but there is a danger that what's happened here is someone has used overdrive in first or second gear, or even reverse, and by bringing the throttle up, they're then putting too much load on the gear, and it started to stress and fret. So eventually what will happen is one of these teeth will just come off, and then it's going to clatter like a good one. So that realistically needs to be replaced. Non-obtainium, unobtainium, unobtainium, and the rest of it, I think it's just going to go back together again, loosely back together again, and it'll be my spares unit, I think. Because the thing is, it's going to cost me, if I was to rebuild all of this with new needle rollers and so forth, it's going to cost me 300 quid in parts, probably about 2 or 3 hours in labour, plus the cost of the core unit. Now these things, I don't know if you've noticed recently, but these things have gone up significantly in price. And I'm seeing these now being advertised at the 750 to, and there's one chap advertising these at 1200 quid. And in all honesty, it could be absolutely no better than that. And I've not even cleaned the rest of the gears up. So what I might do then is clean the rest of the gears up. So I think that goes on to there. I put this together roughly how it would sit. So we've got the selector goes on there, and that whizzes backwards and forwards and chooses the selector. Then I have got that pile of washers and a thrust in the middle of it. Then that goes on to there, and then that should go between there like that. That's how the lay shaft kind of sits against it. So the lay shaft is turning both the high or the overdrive and non-overdrive gears at the same rate, but until the selector rod selects whether you want the overdrive or not, that would then dictate whether the main thing is going to drive or the output shaft is going to drive. So if I was to look then at this gear, sorry, which gear did I decide? It was that gear, didn't I? So I just put all that shit back in there. So realistically I need to clean this up now. I don't want to go berserk. In fact, now the bearing we decided is fucked. So let's clean this gear up and see what we're looking like on here. Well, there's a hulking great chunk out of it. So I think that this is an X overdrive. Another hulking great chunk. Was that the same hulking great chunk? I can see other chunks out of gears as well. So I think it's been widely abused, that one. It's not going to be discreet, it's not going to be quiet. There's not a lot I can do about that really. Let's just pop. Yeah, that's the input output shaft. That's the main bearing that goes on the front. That's the main bearing that goes on the back. That's the main shaft. That's the lay shaft. So let's give this a clean up. And toothy brushy, taken uppy. There he is. Been some fairly heavy greasiness as well. Now, as far as I was aware, these overdrive units, they should really be running the same oil as the gearbox, i.e. a 2050 multi-grade engine oil, mineral. This looks like it's had a really heavy oil in it. It's not just engine oil on this. Now we've cleaned the worst of the grease out of the bearing. What do you reckon? That's one dead bearing. Right, let's give that a quick clean. I'm going to go out and spray it with some water, then we'll come back and inspect. That's where the chip was, and there's a number of other fairly heavy scars on this gear, on top of a bearing that really isn't very... I'll just put some lube on it, in fact, just a bit of lube. What do you reckon? I reckon that's serviceable. That'll go. That's with engine oil in it. Probably should be a bit quieter than that, really, shouldn't it? Right, okay, we are where we are. I'm going to have a conversation with the customer. This is actually my overdrive unit. I took it off a gearbox, I got outside my unit. But I thought before we just lob it straight onto the car, let's have a quick look at some of the weaker points on this, and teeth on the lay shaft are probably the killer on this. The rest of this is serviceable. Oh, the only other thing I've got is, and this is quite a common fault on these, is the eye that connects to the selector rod on the outside. Someone's obviously given it a belt and it's snapped off. So probably could make one of those up, I don't know. Weld a piece of metal onto the end of that and then drill a hole through it. I don't know, probably. In a nutshell though, where do we go with it? Another unit is where we go with it. And the clutch has arrived. So this has come from L.O.F clutches. Came in, so there's the website. It came in from a website purchase. I was particularly attracted to this because compared to the cost of, let's say, a driveline or a Borg and Beck clutch, this came in with all the extra clips and so forth that these guys have engineered, and I'll show you these in a second. Came in with all these different bits that I needed, and it worked out to be about, I don't know, 20 or 30 quid more. But these guys, they really do go out of their way to advertise that the clutch is tougher. So every clutch is tested 3 times before shipping. Well, I'll tell you what, pretty sure Borg and Beck don't test their clutches 3 times before shipping. Well, if they do, I don't know what they test them on. That was on Triumph Stags rather than on Range Rover Rover V8s. But so yeah, they've got YouTube channels and everything, and they go through a fairly comprehensive checklist really of things that you want to check out, most of which I've already done, of course, because I've had the flywheel skimmed. Shut that beauty out. So I'll get the clutch plate and the pressure plate on the engine. I'll fit up the clutch fork. I'm not going to put the slave back in, but I can get everything else back in. The reason I don't want the slave back in is because I could still be dropping the tail end of the gearbox down to fit an overdrive. However, it's not going to be this one. And the bearing's shot on it as well. So by the time I've rebuilt that with new bearings, new seals, new gaskets, I've still got a shagged out lay shaft. And it's going to end up costing a small fortune. So I need to talk to the customer about that. That's my overdrive unit, by the way. It came off one of my gearboxes. So I've opted not to sell that one. It will go, I'll lob it back together so it's just loosely fitted together. And then I can use that really for bits at some point in the future. But it's a shame because these things, they do get abused and they do put up with an awful lot of shit. But that one I just think has probably gone just a bit too far. Now you're going to look at that and you're going to say that lay shaft, that's a beauty, that is. That's about as good as they get. Well, that's going to be as noisy as anything. That really is going to add to the overall volume of the LT95 gearbox. So yeah, I don't think we'll be doing that. Right, so what we do need to do is if we compare some parts first and foremost. So here we've got the nice new release Juddery bearing. Oh look, well it's not all plastic and cheap. Look at that, look at the difference. One's plastic and cheap and one's not. Oh, that sounds nice. And that doesn't. Doesn't even feel nice. And I don't think that's a particularly old release bearing either. Right, so there's nothing particularly complex about putting the clutch on these things. And if you don't know how to put the clutch on one of these things, but you have managed to get the engine out, then it's not particularly complex. The key thing is to make sure the clutch plate is central on the flywheel. I'm going to use my circlip pliers there to get that little bit of tape under. You need to make sure that the clutch plate is central on the flywheel, and you use a clutch alignment tool in order to do that. And we'll just have a quick peek in here. I'm not going to go too berserk grabbing hold of this thing because I have got grubby-ish hands. I'll just get it in the middle. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? That's nice. Looks good, huh? Quite heavy duty. We compare that to the original, and this original is an AP Lockheed. So on one of the rivets here we got an AP. So yeah, completely different design of clutch as far as the spring and so forth is concerned. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out. Before I go nuts fitting this up, by the way, I'm going to make sure that that fits onto the gearbox spline, which means that I need to clean my hands. Down a bit. So this is my Sykes Pickerman clutch alignment tool. You can get all sorts of clutch alignment tools, there's loads out there, but the idea is you have that bush, which is the exact diameter of the splines on the input shaft, and you've got that bush, which is the exact diameter of the pilot bush on the end there. Put it through the clutch plate, making sure the clutch is the right way around. Position the pilot shaft in, and then that's more or less central. It's got maybe a millimetre of room in there, so you need to still do a bit of alignment by eye, but that's close enough to be able to get the gearbox on. And then the nice thing about this tool is I can put the clutch pressure plate over the top of it, onto the dowels, nip it up. Well, I've come to put these bolts back on again, and then I've noticed that some of these have actually been bottoming out. Some of them have been shortened. So I'm not entirely sure I know what is going on here. That one there, you can see, is about 2 mil longer than that one. Those are the same length. Those are the same length. Same length. I suspect this one that's been chopped down is the root cause of the problem here. Because you can see that that would not have secured that corner of the clutch cover plate properly. So that's then caused all the damage to the flywheel and various other bits and bobs. You can see the gap on the tip here. I don't know if that's clear or not. Then the next thing I noticed was when I put the spring washers on, well, they're very clearly not 3/8 washers. These are 3/8 washers. And if I get the vernier and I measure the internal diameter, 9.45, measure the ones that have come off the car, 10.2, 10.3. So these are metric lock washers they put onto Imperial bolts. Can this get any more fucked up? Never mind. These things happen, Richard. We're not blamestorming. But what it does do is it explains to me. I don't like when I can't find the root cause to a problem. And in this particular case, I think we found here a couple. And I need to take the end off that bolt unless I've got another one that's the right length. I don't think I have. Oh! Let's have a look in the box. No, I'm going to need to grind the end off that bolt. But it's a fair amount, as you can see. Have I got one that's fully threaded? I have got one that's fully threaded. How about that? If we're going to grind the end of a bolt, why don't we grind the end off one that's not got a shoulder on it? Because I couldn't even tell you if that shoulder's going to go through. Let's turn you around. If that shoulder's going to go through. There's my big box of bolts there. Look at that. The clutch cover. It does. But that's what the dowels are for. And if the shoulder did go through it, I reckon that's going to bottom out. It's going to bottom out on the shoulder before it goes through. So if we... Yeah, I can see the shoulder on the other side. So completely the wrong type of bolt gone in there. So that'll be what's caused that problem there. Watch out for your shoulders on your bolts, folks. Just cutting the bolt down to the correct length isn't necessarily going to fix that. If I look then at how much shoulder is hanging out, and bear in mind this is a new clutch cover, we've got just over 2 mil of shoulder hanging out. So this bolt would not have been able to do up tight. There's a bolt without a shoulder on it, but it's just too long. So I need to shorten this down to that length, which is about 4 or 5 threads needs to come off it. Let me do that. Good Lord, what a beautiful day. Currently about 27 degrees, creeping up to 28, and it's warming up fast. Fabulous summer day. It's what we're used to in this country. Well, we used to be. Those that were born in the 70s and 60s will remember long, hot summers. Right, okay. Woohoo! Engine's back in. Now, I didn't video it just because it's hot and I just wanted to get on with this. But effectively, I adjusted my straps, which do not lift straps. So, yeah, use whatever mechanism you want to use to get the engine up and out. But I tend to use heavy-duty ratchet straps, and they work well because I can adjust the height of the engine. So I got it so that when I lifted it off the floor, the nose of the engine was just very slightly higher than the tail of the engine, and then I put a jack under the bell housing of the gearbox to adjust the gearbox up and down while I'm adjusting the crane up and down, looking at the gap at the back end here, and then got it so that once I was rotating the crankshaft, it slipped onto the spline, straight on, no problems at all. So that probably took me about an hour and a half really of pissing around, and now I'm doing the bolts up. Now, when it comes to doing these bolts up, no engine mounts, supported on the crane still. Look at the room you get down here. God, that's my top tip for the week. Oh yes. So at the moment, and obviously if we're doing this like this, then the gear stick and everything needs to be out of inside, so which it is. So there's nothing on the inside. But you can still see the gearbox hasn't dropped that much. It does remind me that when I drop this gearbox down, in order to drop the tail end of the gearbox down, I'm going to have to take the diff lock plunger off. But engine's gone in, which is good because it's not on my floor anymore. So I'm going to carry on just doing these bolts up, and then I'll lift the engine up. I'm going to slot the mounts back into place again, purely because I don't want it resting like that. So slot the mounts back in again, and then it's ready more or less for me to think what I'm going to do with the overdrive. I guess what I'm really trying to say is that if I'm going to take an engine out again, then I will lift the engine up, take the cross member out, because you won't get the clearance otherwise, take the engine mounts out, drop the engine down as low as it will go, get access to the bolts. Especially if the cross member needs to come out anyway. Just the amount of room in there. One of these helps as well. A bendy angle wrench. Oh dear, oh dear. Tidy bench too. Just before the end credits, give me a thumbs up if you liked that. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't. Mind you, you've got all the way to the end of it, so you probably would have given me a thumbs down by now anyway. Comments down below. All of these things do help to promote the work that I do and promote to YouTube for your benefit. If you want to contact me, churchhouseclassics, it's all one word, @gmail.com. And if you want to support the channel, then there's a PayPal me link scrolling down here. Both my email and the PayPal me link are in the description below this video. And that's my car, still sitting here. I might have to change this feature once it gets back on the road. It'll embarrass me enough into getting this back on the road. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.